What if the secret to overcoming life's biggest, toughest challenges started with something you do every single morning? Well, that's the simple, but really profound idea from retired Admiral William H. McRaven. It all started with a university commencement speech that went so viral, it became this book, where he breaks down 10 core lessons from Navy SEAL training that can totally change how we face adversity.
I know what you're thinking. If you want to change the world, start by making your bed. It sounds almost ridiculously simple, doesn't it? I mean, how could a task so mundane, so small, possibly have any connection to changing the world? Well, the surprising answer is that this first, tiny act of discipline is actually the foundation for everything else.
So, McRaven's first lesson is all about this idea that the entire tone of your day, and maybe even your life, is set in those first few moments after you wake up. It's all about the psychology of getting that very first thing done.
Okay, so picture this, a Spartan barracks in Coronado, California. Before the brutal swims, the long runs, and the constant yelling from instructors even begins, there is one task that is absolutely non-negotiable. The very first thing you do is make your bed.
And listen, we're not just talking about pulling the covers up. We are talking about an inspection of perfection. Taut sheets, perfect hospital corners, a pillow centered just so. The standard was so incredibly high that an instructor's quarter had to literally bounce off the blanket. And you see, this was never really about neatness. It was about instilling absolute discipline from the very first second of the day.
Just think about the psychology here for a second. When you complete that first task perfectly, you get this small, immediate sense of pride. It reinforces the idea that you are capable, that you are detail-oriented. And that one little win, it kicks off this positive feedback loop, encouraging you to tackle the next task, and then the next one. And hey, even on a terrible day, you come back to a perfectly made bed, a concrete reminder that you can do something right.
Okay, so you've made your bed. You've got that first win under your belt, but that first personal accomplishment isn't enough. While we often picture a Navy SEAL as the ultimate lone warrior, McRaven's second lesson shows us that the reality is the exact opposite. To survive the biggest challenges, you absolutely need a team.
And the way they taught this lesson was with a simple 10-foot rubber raft. Trainees had to carry this thing everywhere, to meals, over sand dunes, and paddle it through the pounding surf. It was a constant, brutal lesson in teamwork, because if one person was sick or just totally exhausted, the others had to paddle harder. They had to dig deeper to pick up the slack, because they all knew that one day they'd be the one needing that help.
Years later, this lesson became devastatingly real for McRaven. And it wasn't a training drill this time. It was a moment that threatened to end his career and change his life forever. It all started as just another routine jump. 12,000 feet up, beautiful California day. McRaven dives out of the C-130, arms extended, just falling through the sky. And then, disaster. Another jumper slid right beneath him and pulled his ripcord. The parachute just blossomed open instantly, hitting McRaven like an airbag deploying at 120 miles per hour, sending him spinning completely out of control.
As his own tangled parachute finally caught air, the risers, which were wrapped around each of his legs, violently pulled apart. The force was just catastrophic. His pelvis was ripped apart, the muscles torn right from the bone, the pain unimaginable. So there he is, lying in a hospital bed for months, physically unable to paddle his own raft. But here's the thing, he wasn't alone. His wife, Georgianne, gave him the tough love he needed, refusing to let him quit or feel sorry for himself. His friends, his boss, they all stepped in, providing the support that ultimately saved his career. It was the hardest possible way to learn that your success truly, truly depends on others.
And this brings us to what might be one of the toughest lessons of all, both in SEAL training and in life. The simple, hard truth that sometimes things just aren't fair. And the only thing that really matters is how you respond.
In SEAL training, they teach this lesson with something called the sugar cookie. And yeah, it's not as nice as it sounds. The punishment was simple. Run into the freezing surf, get completely soaked, and then roll around on the beach until every single inch of you is caked in wet sand. It's miserable, it's uncomfortable, and you have to spend the rest of the day like that.
But here's the real kicker. It was often completely random. You could perform perfectly, do everything right, and still end up a sugar cookie, just because an instructor felt like it. It was a raw, unfiltered lesson in humility. You can't control everything. Sometimes you just get sandy. You just have to drive on.
McRaven saw the ultimate example of this principle in one of his own instructors, a guy named Moki Martin.
Moki was this phenomenal athlete, an incredible SEAL. Then a horrific bicycle accident left him paralyzed from the waist down. Life dealt him the ultimate unfair blow. But in the 35 years since, McRaven says he never once heard Moki complain or ask, "Why me?" Instead, he drove on, becoming an accomplished painter, a father, and a community leader. He just refused to be defined by his misfortune.
So this whole idea of facing unfairness head-on, it connects directly to the next big lesson, embracing failure. We're so often taught to fear failure, but in SEAL training, it's seen as inevitable, and more importantly, it's seen as a tool to make you stronger.
If you failed any event during the day, whether it was the run or the swim or the obstacle course, your name went on a list. And that list was your personal invitation to the circus. And trust me, this is one circus you did not want to go to. So what was the circus? It was 2 extra hours of intense, grueling exercise at the end of an already exhausting day. It was designed to be a death spiral. The extra workout made you more tired for the next day, which led to more failure, which led to another circus, until eventually you just quit.
But here's where it gets interesting. A funny thing happened to McRaven and his swim buddy, Mark. They were constantly last on the swims and became regulars at the circus. What was designed to break them didn't. All the extra flutter kicks, the extra pain, the extra suffering, it was actually making them stronger. They were embracing the failure and using it as fuel.
The big payoff came during the final grueling 5-mile ocean swim. Numb, exhausted, McRaven and Mark were the first pair to finish, shocking absolutely everyone. The very instructor who had punished them for weeks just looked at them and said it looks like all that extra pain and suffering paid off. They didn't just survive the circus, they used it to become elite.
And that, right there, brings us all the way back here. Back to the very beginning, to that simple bed. Making it is your first victory of the day. It proves you can pay attention to detail. Finding someone to help you paddle, accepting that life isn't fair, and not being afraid of failure. All of these big, life-altering lessons are built on the discipline you learn from that first simple task.
So after all these intense stories, all these lessons forged in the toughest military training in the world, what's the single crucial point that ties it all together?
It's this: the little things really do matter. Discipline, pride, and momentum all start small. So if you want to accomplish the big things, whatever they may be for you, the journey doesn't start with some grand gesture. It starts with one small, completed task. It starts by making your bed.